Today, we're diving into a really powerful piece of writing called Somali Honor. Its whole purpose is to tell a story that completely challenges the headlines. It offers a totally different look at the Somali people and the impact they've had all over the world. So let's get into it. Right from the jump, the source material opens with this direct challenge. It's not trying to be defensive. It's basically saying, hey, for everyone who thinks they know the story, this is a correction of the record. It really sets the stage. And that's the big question, right? This is what the source sets out to answer. It suggests that what we usually see in the news is just a tiny, tiny fraction of a much bigger, more complex, and honestly, a much more impressive reality. So this first section gets right to the heart of it. It's all about moving past those negative portrayals that have, for a long time, really dominated the conversation about the Somali people. The core argument here is that a few bad incidents have been blown way out of proportion and used to paint an entire global community with one brush. The source argues that the real story, well, you find that in the everyday lives, the character, and the contributions of the people themselves. So if that's not the real story, what is? Well, this is where the source introduces this absolutely fascinating idea it calls the nomadic business DNA. Think of it like a cultural software, a code that it argues has been the key to Somali success all around the world. So what exactly is this DNA? Well, you have to imagine a world with no lawyers, no courts, no written contracts. In the vast open life of a nomad, your reputation was everything. It was your most valuable asset. Survival didn't depend on a piece of paper. It depended on people knowing you were someone they could trust. So rule number one was simple. You survive by trust. In a world where you're constantly on the move, your business partners today could be hundreds of miles away tomorrow. Without trust, nothing would get done. Commerce would just stop. And that leads directly to the second rule, your honor. Your word had to be your bond. In this kind of culture, breaking a promise wasn't just a letdown, it was like a death sentence for your reputation. Word travels fast, and your ability to make a living would just disappear. And the third rule makes perfect sense, then. You have to deal cleanly. Cheating a partner isn't just a bad move, it's a threat to your own survival. So these three things, trust, honor, and clean dealings, they became the unwritten laws of business. Okay, so this brings us to a really key difference. The source directly contrasts this whole nomadic way of thinking with how much of the Western world does business. This one sentence, it just nails the entire argument. It frames honor not just as some nice idea, but as a real functional tool for business. It's a substitute for a 20-page legal document. Now, this comparison makes it crystal clear. On the left, you've got the system most of us know, right? Written contracts, backed up by the threat of being sued. But on the right, the source shows the Somali way. It says this way relies on something internal, a person's honor, a deep sense of trust, and a cultural expectation that you keep your promises. And here's the crucial part. This code of honor isn't just cultural. It's deeply tied to faith. According to the text, Islamic principles that forbid lying and cheating in business aren't just suggestions. They are fundamental rules that shape every single deal. Next up, the source dives into another key part of this business DNA, this incredibly community-focused way of looking at wealth and opportunity. And this shows perfectly how it's supposed to work. It's not about just one person getting rich. It's about lifting up the whole group. A single successful business becomes the seed that grows into many others. Profits aren't just kept by one person. They're reinvested back into the community, creating this powerful ripple effect that helps everyone. This is such a powerful statement. It sums up the end result of that collective model. The idea is that this way of doing things builds a social and economic safety net that's way more resilient than just individual wealth. It allows the whole community to thrive, even when things get tough. So, okay, we've talked about the theory, this idea of a business DNA. But what about the results? Does it actually work in the real world? Well, this section gives us some concrete examples of this DNA in action across the globe. The source makes some pretty big claims here. In Kenya, it describes the Somali community as a major economic driver, building entire districts. Across East Africa, they're powering essential trade networks. And right here in the United States, they're credited with bringing dying towns and neighborhoods back to life. The whole point is that this isn't a coincidence. It's the direct result of that cultural DNA. And the text points to Minneapolis as a perfect case study. The city once had this awful nickname, Murderapolis, but it was transformed. The source argues that this turnaround was driven in a huge way by the arrival of the Somali community, who used their collective business model to open shops, revitalize whole areas, and create this new sense of energy and hope. So instead of the negative labels we see in headlines, the source wants to completely reframe the Somali identity based on their actions. They are builders, traders, givers, survivors, and creators of opportunity. It's a total shift in the narrative, from being a burden to being an active, positive force. And here it all comes together. The source sums up the Somali character with these key traits. It's this specific combination, it argues, being entrepreneurial, generous, resilient, honest, that is the engine behind the community's success around the world. And this is the powerful closing line from the text. It speaks to a history of surviving incredible hardship, war, famine, you name it, and turning that deep resilience into a force for creation and for rebuilding, no matter where they end up. And in the end, the source material leaves us with this question to think about. It really pushes us to look beyond our own systems of contracts and lawsuits and to just consider the incredible power of trust, honor, and community as the real bedrock of prosperity.